All right, good evening. Hello, CONDG. Welcome to the third to last meeting of the year, August 2024. It's flown by. Tonight we have a really interesting topic talking about Playwright, really good modern way of testing .NET applications. James Otworth is going to be walking us through that. Before that, I guess I'm Matt Eland, one of our organizers here. If you are here in office, please device responsibly. Please don't be downloading multiple copies of Quake or streaming the internet or whatever the heck you're doing over there, because I'm assuming that you're going to be wanting to be reaching the web in order to test, websites. Fun fact: I would probably test isitfriday.org. I think that's a good way of testing things. And yes, I seem to have automatically have a slight advancement going on. That's okay. We'll be fine. We are on Meetup, so if you find us at meetup.org, that'll tell you when and where we are. Our location will be changing in November, so stay tuned in October, so stay tuned for that. My goodness. But we do meet the fourth Thursday of every month. There's a reason I usually run this on desktop. Now I'm remembering. Alan, myself, and Sam are all the co-organizers here. Fun story: Sam's not here because he's helping people get to and from soccer games. His Twitter handle is the Soccer Dev, so go figure. This is our third to last meeting. Next month we are going to be talking about .NET Aspire with Barrett Blake, which is awesome, and then Chris Farrell will close us out for the year talking about logging. We are on YouTube, so you can get over 321 subscribers are currently watching, but we have other videos out there on prior meetings. We are on Twitter, or X, if you insist on calling it X. We don't tweet that much, but you can find announcements about our events and ask us questions. And there's a LinkedIn group that we use even less than that, so if you are inclined, that's a thing that you can take a look at. We are sponsored by Improving, yay for space, and Schrodinger's Pizza, which may or may not be coming. Yay for JetBrains for our swag there. And then the .NET Foundation pays for our meetup fees, and we love them for that. Other groups in the area, we have Columbus JS, we've got tech support, we've got CBus Data, which used to be CBus Pass. We have CBus Azure. And then we have the newer group, the Central Ohio DevOps, I believe. So check those groups out as well. Who here is hiring? See hands for Improving, and Foxen, and Drake, where are you nowadays?
Rogue Fitness.
Rogue Fitness.
We're hiring in QA, but I think we're in late interviews. We might have filled it.
Okay. So you might be able to find a QA job over there at Rogue Fitness. Foxen is looking for engineers. Improving is looking for what? Improvers, I assume.
Actually, I believe we're looking for some Python folks.
Python folks, Parseltongue speakers.
We're looking for .NET devs.
Yep, .NET devs are awesome. So if you're here, there's a bathroom code for the ladies' room, 5600 star. That's the building number. Feel free to go out and get snacks and do all that good stuff. Just be respectful as you're coming in and out of James as he's talking. Don't be that respectful though, so please do heckle him with questions and things like that. Ask him things about like, hey James, could you write a test that would incur a lot of costs or would work with a lot of things at the same time, or other things like that. Other very valid questions. You wouldn't really want to be testing on all documents in the entire system, would you?
Is that directed towards the audience or someone specific?
Sure, yeah.
All documents are the ones from last hectic though.
Oh, okay.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Can I have tests to intentionally validate race conditions?
On that note, we're going to have James come on up. James is going to talk to us about Playwright, which is really modern, great way of doing testing with .NET. Anything really web oriented. And James, I'll let you get your video in there, and I'll get that laptop out of your way. But thanks for presenting tonight. I'm looking forward to this one quite a bit.
Yeah, thank you.
While James is being stood up, do we know if we are streaming right now?
It should be live.
Okay.
Awesome. I just posted on Twitter.
X.
Whatever. We can call it seeding now. That's the change that we can make.
company formerly
Still
known
called
as X.
Twitter. Can we turn the lights
Formerly known as
Yep,
WC.
we will. That's a great point. Thank you. Takes it a second sometimes on the HDMI. You might want to unplug it and plug it back in. Give it a try.
We do this on purpose.
No worries.
They'll eventually have to make the new projector worse than the office so you feel at home.
Right, simulated.
While we're waiting, the CFP for Code Match is currently open. So that's in January. So if you were thinking about giving a talk or workshop or talk to kids for Kids Match, that's a good thing to investigate. That's a lot of fun. That'll be open the rest of the month. Also, not quite so early bird tickets are still available for Momentum. They'll get more expensive as the event gets closer, but that is in October 17th. And then I believe Columbus AI Week is free, and registrations are open for that. It's a 3-day event in September. And I swear we did a tech check. James Trumpy, unplugging it from the wall. Can you plug it back in?
Like the laptop?
The HDMI.
Maybe I sit down my way over.
You can also tweak with your AC if you want to, but that.
Try go Windows P and just make sure you're not on single screen only.
Yes, it does weird stuff.
PC screen only.
Windows key P is the shortcut for screen.
Is it directly plugged into your laptop?
Yeah.
HDMI port?
Mm-hmm. USB-C.
Oh, there's
It's worth trying, right?
Yep.
It worked earlier for James. I could attest to that.
Plug that in.
See, it's still
Over on this side.
doing its own thing. The right source?
flash.
That's a
That's a good sign.
That means the virus is installing.
Yeah. Great. Thanks for that. Yeah.
What is going on here?
Have a remote?
Hold on there.
Try to mess around with display settings and all. See if there's something in there.
Does anyone know a technologist?
Yeah, what do you think of?
Come on. All right, that's fun.
Try turning it off and on.
I think that's the next option.
Laptop.
There's too many things plugged into the wall.
No.
USB.
Oh, sorry.
There we go. Hey. All right.
So what was the magic ingredient?
I reset the splitter.
Turning it off and back on again.
So yeah, turn it off and back on.
Just turning on and off the right thing.
Now that we've built up the proper level
All
of
right,
participation.
roll with them in.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining me today. My name is James Otworth. My topic, test automation with Playwright. So a little bit about me. That's me, believe it or not. I'm a software engineer as well. Been working as a dev for a little over 5 years. Graduated from a local boot camp named Tech Elevator. I've heard of it. And when I started out as a junior, the first project I was assigned to maintain was a test library of Selenium automated UI tests. There were roughly 400 of them. About 25% of them ran successfully every now and then. The rest were in dire need of refactoring. So I have quite a few strong opinions on UI test automation as a result. And that has led me to definitely lean heavily into Playwright, my adoption of it, and I'm really excited to sort of showcase a lot of the benefits of this modern testing framework. But believe it or not, I've gone on to do other things other than write UI tests. Currently, I'm a software engineer at Foxen. We're a local fintech firm here in Columbus, Ohio, and we do all sorts of great things I've been able to work on, been learning a lot about integration, internal applications, and recently, of course, test automation. And just a little something more about me, my latest passion project, really big into learning to use Unity framework for game development. A friend of mine who shall remain unnamed, when I showed up to their house, perhaps a week ago, gifted me about $350 worth of books that I will soon be pouring over. So that'll be my latest interest. But enough about me. Let's learn a little bit more about Playwright. So what is Playwright? Well, it's an open source library for end-to-end UI testing. It's not just for .NET. You can use it in a number of languages, such as Python. You have Java. You can utilize it in pretty much any modern language that you want to extend that API through. It can be used in. It was initially developed by Microsoft. It's now been handed over to an open source community who's responsible for maintaining it and adding new functionality as it evolves and grows alongside us. Playwright has a unified Fluent API. That essentially means it's very English reading as you code it out. And essentially anything that you do through a browser, Playwright can automate. And for those of you who might be wondering, okay, well, what's end-to-end testing? There's a lot of different kinds of testing. I won't go too deep into it today, but essentially, when we're testing software, we want to see how does it perform under load testing. How does it perform at a unit level, very granular in the code, unit testing. End-to-end testing is more of a test for how does the flow of software operate? Does it work according to our expectations? Does the user experience hold up? And so that way, if we can script this out in an automated fashion, we can be confident that as we make changes to our code base over time, the user experience is still solid. And that's where Playwright really shines. I have a few logos here along the bottom of my slide. You might recognize a few of those. All adopters of Playwright. It's not just James advocating for it. Quite a few businesses and tech shops have had great success leveraging Playwright as a tool for automated testing. For those of you who showed up to my last presentation about a month ago, you probably got some of the overview of this slide here, but for those of you who are just now getting introduced to this topic for the first time, I'll go ahead and just kind of cover some of the benefits of Playwright, especially when compared to more established competitors like Selenium, for instance. So Playwright's cross-browser. Any modern browser that you can expect your users to interact with, Playwright can natively run tests in it. So Chromium, WebKit, Firefox, any of those modern rendering engines can be emulated and executed natively by Playwright, which is great because as you're doing your testing, after your changes, you don't have to manually spin up those browsers yourselves. Playwright will do that for you. Cross-platform, Playwright runs just as fine on Windows as it does on Linux or Mac OS. You can run it locally or within the context of a CI/CD pipeline for those of you working more sophisticated and evolved projects, and headless or headed, meaning we don't need to manually spin up a browser instance to run Playwright tests, but we can if we want to, especially if you're running this locally and you want to see Playwright exercise all the elements in the DOM. Like I mentioned before, Playwright is cross-language. So that Playwright API can be utilized in TypeScript, JavaScript, Python, .NET, you name it. Almost anything that we develop in nowadays, Playwright interacts with quite well. And it's cross-experience, so any sort of device that you can anticipate your users accessing your web app through, you can emulate that as well, down to the, the device scale factor, or even that mobile emulation of, of that OS, Google Chrome, Android, Safari. A lot of the things that I think are really worth celebrating about Playwright is a lot of the baked-in functionality that we sort of had to suffer through for the more initial, earlier tools for test automation. So for example, if you were scripting out a Selenium test back in 2019 as James, you had to at a very granular level, dictate what the script should be doing as it's going through, running through your website, going through the DOM, and exercising components. If your components didn't load in time for a certain step in your test script, your test is going to bomb out. If it's unavailable briefly, that test is going to fail. Never mind that the functionality is still present there, right? It couldn't handle dynamic web pages very well. You had to put in a lot of, wait 5 seconds. Hopefully, that gives my test enough time to run through and activate, that component. Fortunately, with Playwright, a lot of that built-in retry logic, waiting for an element to load, waiting until it's accessible or available, it's baked in, it's encapsulated. You don't have to go through and script out that behavior by hand. Playwright says, don't worry, before I execute any of these methods that I have available through this API, I'm going to go ahead and wait, and that's programmed automatically. You can still access that and leverage that if you really want to dictate the specific behavior, but out of the box, you don't need to worry about that sort of hand-holding, we call it. It's also wonderful within the context of an automated pipeline. If your test happens to fail or flakes out, you have a screenshot, you have videos or trace logs that are provided easily through the API so that you can really quickly identify, what did happen with my test failure? Similar to unit tests, Playwright tests are data-driven. You can go ahead, plug in attributes, say, given this user credential, use this test. Now that that test is passed, go ahead and simultaneously run me the same test given this user data, which is really great. Lets you drive all the data you expect to exercise through your application right there in the Playwright test. It can simulate any user behavior that you have in the DOM, hover events, any sort of dynamic controls. You can emulate that through Playwright. It does just fine. Anything that you can anticipate a user behaving, Playwright can emulate that very well. And one of the most exciting things about Playwright is it's also very tool-rich. So imagine if you didn't have to manually script out every test as you go. What if Playwright could generate tests for you? Well, it can. You can utilize CONDG, which is a great way to just automatically build in in-unit MS tests or any other really test language that you want. Just as having it watch you step through and click through the DOM like a user would, it will generate this test for you, which is amazing. Really helps you scaffold up tests very quickly and stamp a project pretty quickly as well. Pause for a second here. So if you're a .NET dev and you go, okay, Playwright sounds cool, I'll go ahead and spin up a project real quick. What's really nice is, since Playwright is very much a Microsoft adjacent product, at least that's how it started, you can go right into Visual Studio, spin up a new project. There's a template available for you. So it's pretty simple to go ahead and get that going. Go in, search for Playwright, pick your flavor. And once you have that project stood up, it's really just a few commands to get all the necessary binaries and scripts generated, download the browsers that Playwright is going to utilize, and in a very short amount of time, you're going to have everything you need to start generating Playwright tests. So how about a demo?
Question, do you know if it supports XUnit? I saw it's tested in unit that doesn't support XUnit. Do you know?
I don't believe so at this time. I know there's been some talk about extending like sort of test libraries it can interact with. But for right now, I've mostly just seen in-unit and MS-test for .NET. Any other questions I can, yeah, go
Now,
ahead.
does it work with VS Code, Playwright?
It can, yeah. It can work with VS Code as well. Really, I would say most of your IDEs will leverage Playwright. It's just a matter of making sure you build the proper binaries and scripts and then leveraging it from there. And a lot of it is, you can edit those files through those IDEs, but a lot of it is driven through the terminal with a lot of like, especially within the context of .NET, like .NET commands. If that makes sense. Although I haven't, yeah, there's a lot of tutorials online for Visual Studio Code and Playwright, so definitely possible, I would say. Okay. So I have here a project that I spun up using just the earlier provided methods that I showed.
Can I ask you to change this, but it's supposed to like me?
No. But actually, can I interest you in a cappuccino macchiato, perhaps? That will load. That's slightly lighter. What do you think of that, Matt? It went from like a navy blue to like a light blue. So
It's more of the higher the contrast, the easier to read.
okay.
Yeah.
Is that more viewable for you guys? I can.
That was less viewable.
Oh no.
You probably want a high contrast too.
Yeah,
So,
high contrast.
Okay.
Polarized light.
This one
Yeah,
that
lighter,
says extra
lighter.
contrast near the top.
Yeah, no extra contrast, like a light plus.
There.
Oh, my retinas.
Sorry for you.
Very light.
I've had too much caffeine today. Come on.
Like, let's hear.
Oh, okay. So
Bigger font.
Yeah,
okay.
you're like 90%.
There you go.
All right, now we're cooking with gas. All right. All right. What do you think, audience? Okay. So, what happened to my word wrap? Oh man, that's better. So this is as if I had just followed those commands to add a project through Visual Studio and run my various scripts to get all the dependencies installed. And what's really cool is that Playwright, upon base template installation, it goes ahead and it spins up a sample test for us. So as someone new to Playwright might be wondering, what are the different sorts of assertions I can do? What's the sort of behavior that I can simulate? This is a pretty good example. They have basically here, that's a jawbreaker of a test name. I don't know if I would go for that, but it's very descriptive and essentially will take us over to the Playwright homepage. So you can basically run it just like a unit test. So that's really nice. It's very familiar to those of us who do a lot of testing in our own code with the unit testing method. Yeah, so let's go ahead and launch it. Well, that wasn't very exciting, but it does seem to work. So what's going on here? Playwright by default runs in what's called as headless mode. By headless, it means it won't spin up a browser physically in front of you while it goes ahead and it does its test assertions and such. Fortunately, you wouldn't normally find this in the standard base template, but what's very common for a lot of test projects is to have just a run settings XML, probably also familiar to you. We leverage a lot of unit tests. And there's a lot of great settings that we can leverage through Playwright here. So the XML, you see we have a Playwright section. We can specify our browser name. So if we want to do a Chromium, for instance, for Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge, go ahead and run that out. We have a global timeout. So by default, when Playwright is waiting for a page to load or a component or element to load, it's going to wait for 3 seconds, as that's how we have it defined here. We can extend that if need be. If you are anticipating a long-running process or a user action where a response might be very delayed, you can go ahead and specify that timeout within that line of that test in Playwright. And you can also do that globally, which is what's happening here. You can see here we have headless as false. I like to see the browser spin up. It makes me happy. You probably do too, because it's cool. And slow-mo. If we were to run this without this option, it would go through pretty much as quickly as the DOM loads. It will rip through all the lines of your test. So we're going to slow it down a little bit just for demonstration's sake.
Would it still retry?
Maybe? I don't think so. I think retry actually we have to configure here.
Okay. Oh, that's not part of the timeout.
Don't. Well, it might. I guess it depends on the kind of assertion or action you're trying to execute.
Could be just refining the element, not like inserting the element.
Yeah. So there's that. Gotta clear up my software door. We'll go ahead and run our test here. Okay, cool. We saw something happen, right? Well, interesting. But what exactly was happening there, right? As someone who's just getting into Playwright, just getting to this specific test, I don't really know what it's quite doing yet without digging into that code. Fortunately, one of the great tools that comes with Playwright is a debug tool, which is really great. It lets you, just the way you'd expect to in any other line of code, step breakpoints and step through lines of code, which is awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and set my environment variable here, debug mode, and let's give it another go. You can see here that for the test that I've chosen to run, it's gone ahead and spun up that code for me. I can set breakpoints here if I want to, but really, and as a sort of inherent behavior, it'll go ahead and stop line by line for us. And so that we can take our time stepping through a test code and really getting very familiar with what's happening. Let's go through here. It's going to be a little slow because I still have that slow-mo at 2 seconds here. That's all right. We kind of see the cursor highlight. Oh, I see what it's doing here. Cool. And that's really nice to do. If you're inheriting a large test project and something is flaking out on you, or you're trying to really understand, let's say you're a new developer to a project and you really want to get more familiar with the website's layout. Code is documentation. Step through the expected functionality. Watch what the expected user path is and understand that flow right from the get-go. So really great stuff here. So you're probably thinking, oh, that's cute, that's nice, all well and good, James. But I'm kind of interested in this CodeGen thing. I want to go ahead and quickly start spinning up some tests for one of my own websites, something that I really enjoy. So not to worry, we can go ahead and do that. Here. So we'll go ahead and run our PowerShell command. We're going to hit that PS1 script that was built when we first installed Playwright. We'll go ahead and wind up CodeGen. Any recommendations from the audience? What website are we most interested in? What do we want to leverage? I have one idea, but I was curious to see what someone might shout out at me, just for funsies.
YouTube?
That'd be hard to test.
Good thinking. However, I know an even better. Sorry. Thank you for the suggestion. I know an even better website.
I got one. I'm just confirmed. I got one for you. Not that one.
Not your blog, Matt? You sure?
Which blog? Let's be real.
Okay.
Friday.org.
How do you spell Friday?
Correctly.
Gotcha. Thanks. Crystal clear.
Did you have to hit record before you first navigated though?
I did not. You can pause and stop recording as you go. By default, it'll record though. It'll start listening as soon as you spin up CodeGen. Is it Friday? No. I don't know if I like this website now.
Just visit it tomorrow. It will be better.
I'll go ahead and expand this here. So right off the bat, we can sort of see some interesting things going on in our CodeGen recording window, right? We have a lot of, we'll call them method handlers for how to obtain different objects. We'll kind of go into the mechanics of that here in a little bit. But just by hovering or mousing over elements in our browser, we can identify different elements of that web page. We can get very, as fine-grained down as the DOM really has represented. We can really grab almost anything here. We have a few shortcuts here, which are pretty handy. We have something called pick locator. A locator is Playwright's way of sort of wrapping around or putting a target on a specific element on your web page. So if I want to get a locator for something, I can go ahead and leverage that here. So I'll get locator for no. You can see here it goes, okay, well, in your test, you can go ahead and grab that by get by text no. Pretty useful. You can do kind of some base assertions right off the bat. So I'm going to go ahead and assert visibility. Can I see no? Expect page, get by text no to be visible async. Okay, pretty self-explanatory. Grab something by its text even. Cool. Oh, it's been cut off. Assert that element contains text. Is it Friday? Go ahead and edit that, right? If one wishes to. There's not a lot going on this page, Matt. But yeah.
Is the tool that you're hovering over right now, is that a standalone tool? Or is that like part of Visual Studio that you pulled out? What is this?
It is a, well, yeah, it's like,
The tool?
yeah, it's a kind of almost standalone tool. Yeah, it's,
And you picked C# or .NET, right?
yeah.
And you can generate something else.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
Would you still get that tool if you're running Playwright in Visual Studio Code?
Yes. You would get it in any chosen platform.
So that's something in the Playwright packages that it is running.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, Matt was first. What is that?
So your snippets for getting things by text, is there? I think of tests often wanting to grab things by IDs or classes. Is there an easy way to do that? I know you can do that with code, but using the debugger, I'm curious if you can.
Possibly.
Because like in this page, if we wanted to see if the big text was yes or no, right?
Mm-hmm.
You probably wouldn't want to find it by its text.
Yeah, probably not.
What was the one, the farthest left, the left of the eye? I
Sorry.
think that was the select by ID. No.
Yeah, it's just a record button. Yeah, I would say for CodeGen, it's really good at spinning up kind of boilerplate code really quickly. But as far as like best practices, oh, let me grab it by something more unique, something that's more reliable. That's something that we're going to kind of have to do once we go ahead and leverage out the base flow of our tests.
So is the scope limited to what's within the browser window, or could you like test a plugin that is also HTML on the back end? But I'm just wondering if it can access that, which is slightly outside of the main browser window.
I'm not sure, but I'm going to say no because it's very dependent upon that browser engine to really interact with anything.
Will it let you access hidden HTML elements?
Yes, it can pierce the shadow DOM and things of that nature. I would say anything that renders in the DOM, you can pretty reliably grab with Playwright.
A quick question. One of the issues that I've encountered with things like Selenium is authenticating before you test. And I'm just wondering how Playwright allows you to handle that. Would you generally authenticate once and then have a bunch of tests and then back out, or would you authenticate each time, or like how would you usually handle that kind of scenario?
Playwright has built-in functionality as a sort of like setup attributed method where you can leverage a shared authorized session between all of your tests so that you don't have to continuously authenticate every time. So yeah, you can leverage that.
Can it not? So it can navigate to something in the site that's local just to your computer, correct? So for example, in the pipeline, you're running a UI, and it only is the pipeline, it's actually going to a regular browser, but it's at some IP address. You can plug that in and have it go to that IP address that only exists within the pipeline.
You should be able to, yeah. Yeah, that was a big use case for when Microsoft initially developed Playwright. Is Selenium didn't play nice. Reference anything that would run like within containers or pipeline context, Selenium would really struggle with. You would have to start spinning up atomic environments just to begin to run Selenium tests in the pipeline. Trust me, I've been through that fresh hell. But Playwright, I believe, has a lot of functionality to assist with that sort of use case. We'll do one more question.
I win. Is it
Congrats.
only web stuff? I thought I saw you say, or in one of the earlier slides, that you could do like mobile stuff too.
You can emulate as if you were using the browser through a device, but it's not like native apps, if that makes sense.
Okay, so it's just
Yeah.
DOM-ish things.
Yes,
Only
and
web, right?
only web. Yeah.
Okay.
You're welcome. A lot of great questions. Thank you, everyone. And I'll definitely touch a lot more in detail upon a lot of those questions. But one more thing I did want to show with the Playwright Inspector is you can specify a target when you're spinning up this like boilerplate test code. So you can see here a lot of the available options Playwright currently has. I can flip through and generate anything I want that's supported, which is pretty great.
And that's everything that you recorded so far. It's just transforming.
Exactly.
I see a lot of awaits in there. Is that kind of an idiom? It's like Playwright, since everything's waiting on things.
Yeah, it's built so basically every API method is asynchronously run. So yeah.
Where would you inject authentication if you're doing that? You said that it is able to. Is that you give a JDP token to it, or is it you actually give it a password as a secret and it types it in for you?
I wouldn't. So I'm going to say all the above. Specifically, I've done a lot of DOM manipulation for login pages, and we sort of share that user session. That's the use case I'm most familiar with. But I also have seen open source projects that have leveraged JWTs and like error tokens and such. So both are feasible, I would say.
And can it replicate hover?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. I would say almost any event can be emulated. Like,
The methods it supports are pretty extensive. Yeah.
oh yeah. It's the new hotness for sure. All right. Now that we have determined that it is not Friday, unfortunately, let's go ahead. Still not used to that color theme. I'm a dark theme sort of dev.
This might be a good opportunity to take a quick pause to grab some food while the food is still hot and available.
For James, you can rest your eyes.
Okay. As soon as I figure out how brackets work.
And it's pronounced George! It's in the spec!
What is it?
John, the actual specification for JSON web tokens says it's pronounced John. It's in the spec. I wrote this under conference.
So I remember when I was younger, like either writing and my friend wanted to be writer, so I just like tried
The
to
demo
go
guys
outside.
were kind
You
of-
can see such where you just kind of make up names. And we'd argue over it, like, look, I'm just gonna write down what I think the name looks like, and I will go find some, like, if for some reason it gets publishing, I will ask that person to be like, this is what I wanted, write down what I was saying.
Yeah,
In
when we were
case it
doing-
doesn't match.
So Boston was like, we've got a difficult practice of testing fish code. And I was really fortunate because I wrote this before that. So you
Oh, wow.
great, you know, different words.
Okay.
Oh, but you have to use Playwright. You have to. It's so good. It's much better than Selenium.
I loved it. I really like the work book they had for recording Slater.
Oh, the CONDG tool?
Because I remember I pronounced it.
Yeah, it's like there's definitely some like it's kind of limited right now. And one of the basic versions I can go ahead and choose. But that's not necessarily the CONDG. Let me set up my flow, and then from here I can start to do fancy stuff. They kind of show up. It's for
I didn't even know it's kind of how I got the brush. The brain just goes
Manual test?
image, and I can keep it straight.
Yeah.
Because you're going too fast.
Against
And it
Right,
just
and
kind of
then
repeats.
You polish it.
fortunately.
I'm having a lot of success doing that with our manual QA.
But
I was like, here's a very basic initial studio habit that she's gone through and basically captured almost all of our use cases.
You're just like, that is him.
Yeah.
Because if you're not reading out loud, there's no pronunciation.
Here you go.
You'll look at your code generated.
Hey, you too, man. Exactly. Yeah, it's been great because it's like seeing you here.
We did have a backup option for you if your video wouldn't work. Sarah was gracious enough to volunteer to hand the microphone for that.
I think I
I'm
get
calling
it.
for the boss.
I'm a web page.
Oh no, my little people.
Always bring up
Feeding the beans.
Supporting vendor software right now.
I'll take a nice to meet you. Yeah, that's a good way.
Still doing it.
Thanks for the further questions.
Yeah, somebody I've actually worked with Selenium, so I was just trying to Playwright, how it kind of like working, because it seems like what's almost doing is just kind of like taking like the actions and then copying down what the code is needed to perform that action. So it's almost like it's recording the tasks, like without you having to go type it out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's some of the hardest part of writing tests is like initially getting that going. It's like, okay, where do I even begin with the context? And this is really good at removing, I think, that like initial inertia of like getting it going. And this is really great because that's something I want to get into here soon. Is like going through and kind of reflecting it a little bit is really simple to do, which is great.
Reroll.
Okay.
Press the button yet?
I just realized this is your nice feature you can use where
You know what?
you can move it around without hand. You just
I'm done recording.
I was just doing it.
I have my test. Literally my test. All right. When everyone's ready, I'm probably going to go ahead and get through the rest of this part of the presentation. Cool. I've got a test now. Awesome. Let's run it. As soon as I...
So yeah, we're shooting this.
that.
James, then tap bar on the right.
Yep.
Is that just a reconfiguration of something done in the Visual Studio, or is it?
Oh yeah, yeah. You can there's a tab menu you can bring up, and if you click that little gear icon, you can put that anywhere your heart desires. Yeah. It's funny you mention that because my boss actually asked me the same thing.
It's funny. I have tools that I use that have the tabs on the left, the tab on the bottom, the tab on the right. And if I see that same tool configured a different way, it looks weird, even though I use other tools there.
Yeah, Visual Studio is. It's so rich in like functionality that really, it's almost overwhelming at first. It can be kind of hard. That's why I didn't reach out over here. All right. Well, Playwright doesn't recognize my test. The demo gods were kind up until this point, so we can just get on that from here. Is it Friday? Let's find out.
It's not. Good Friday somewhere.
Well, let's let the test decide that. Cool. Not Friday. Well, not cool, but you know what I mean. All right.
A question about
Uh-huh.
that, actually.
Uh-huh.
So I'm used to mostly unit tests where I can control the API response. I can test, is it Friday and is it not Friday, any day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the business logic management or front-end test, are you essentially just checking do the buttons exist, or would you actually be doing things like validating the right kinds of numbers are coming back, or the right kinds of numbers are coming back for a given day or given database state?
So you're talking about sort of validating server-side state almost.
Yes. We're trying to write unit tests now to validate a bunch of business logic it's putting out mathematical output.
Mm-hmm.
But unless we're generating a fresh database every time, those numbers could vary each time we hit the site. Or unless we're mocking our own responses in a mock database.
Mm.
That's just not something that Playwright's for. It's just for like, is the button there? Or am I missing something?
I would answer that question as Playwright's strength relies upon less on what's kind of going on under the hood and more of what is being presented in the browser to the user when they follow a set of given actions or a user flow. You can likely mock things out the way that you would in anything a unit test does, Playwright can do and interact with. I've seen a lot of cool stuff online with, for example, email testing. Put something like MailChimp or MailSlurp in, right? Interact and leverage those APIs, capture that response, and have Playwright initiate the email and then let MailChimp handle the rest of it. So Playwright could be seamlessly integrated, I would say, into any sort of workflow you want. But as far as the specific validations of like data that's being returned or other integration aspects, you likely want to leverage other libraries or technologies that you could operate within the context of a unit test.
So I see this as more of an integration style tool than at the level that you're talking about. This is not for that. This is for, you know, if you're displaying those results on the screen, are the numbers displayed on the screen the way they should be? Because integration test is like, you know, do the thing, let all the magic happen, and then test the result. And that's where this tool was.
Yeah.
You reduce that wait time, whatever it was called.
Slow-mo.
Yeah, slow-mo. You're still looking at a decent delay per test compared to like a unit test right now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And one other question, since you said that other thing about MailChimp. So could you just use this as a web bot if you wanted to, I don't know, wanted to vote 1,000 times for online tests? Could you just run a Playwright loop and just have it run and do that for you? Yep.
It can be used for good or evil.
Yeah, any task that you can run in a browser, Playwright will automate it. It'll do a good job of it. Yeah.
You might get in trouble for that. They kind of when something off is on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Full disclaimer, please don't go online and use Playwright to vote.
Playwright.
please don't weaponize Playwright. It's a gentle soul. Don't turn it to evil, please. Okay. Gotta hurry up and go back to presentation though before my chicanery is revealed to itself. Really? Okay, there we go. All right, cool. So that was great. Oh, what's this? Batman. James, quick, how do I stop the Riddler from introducing regressions into the Bat code? Well, with such a celebrity as Batman showing up and asking me such an urgent question, I'll have to do my best to help fight crime where crime needs fighting.
That's called knowing your audience.
Yes. So I'm gonna show you something a little more sophisticated. So it's very simple, as you saw, to spin up a lot of tests and quickly generate a lot of boilerplate code. But what does a more kind of best practices approach to Playwright look like? So there's a few best practices that have evolved within the context of UI test automation over the past, I would say, 5-10 years, however long Selenium's been out. And I would like to demo some of those. So I have here, this is a web app. And I have a test project. And I have a sort of base structure here. So we see our old friend test.run settings.xml, global usings, fun stuff, basic, but organized the way we want it to be. I'm gonna go ahead and run this project so that we have an idea of what we're working with. So getting used to the bright theme. Nothing exciting, just very boilerplate introduction. This is a web app, right? One of the more popular methodologies for organizing your test code, because it can get pretty verbose very quickly, is leveraging something called the page object model. this is just a simple way in an OOP fashion to kind of have these wrappers around the different pages that feature in our web app. So as you can see, we have a web page. This is the home page of our web page. So we have tests for it. More importantly, we have the page object model for it. So very basic, base URL, very similar to a lot of classes I'm sure you've seen. Sure. There we go. Is that better? Okay. So some very simple things going on here, just as an example. So if we go back to our homepage test, you'll notice a lot of the ways that we identify the different components we want to interact with and do assertions against, it's more of a neater tie-in, right? So as opposed to every line saying, get by ID, blah, 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 yada, yada, get by, filter by, et cetera, we can go ahead and encapsulate that within the POM file. So that way, if we're wanting to extend and run more tests, we can do so without duplicating a lot of that code. We can keep it in a unified, clean manner here in the page object model that represents that page that we're testing. So you can see here, a lot of what you would see generated by that Playwright code gen tool, we can go ahead and hide that within a locator wrapper. What is a locator? Well, I would explain it to you, but Playwright fortunately has very well constructed XML documents and would do a better job than me anyway. So it's just a central piece of Playwright's auto-weighting and retryability. So yeah, that retry is built in. So in a nutshell, locators just represent a way to find elements on the page at any moment. So we can go ahead, have common locators for each element on a page, and then that way, as a result, instead of having to regenerate code and rewrite it over and over again, we can leverage common methods, and then we can focus on writing assertions for our given use case. So that's one of the benefits of the page object model. There's a lot of ways to organize tests as well. You likely saw this Playwright test directory. A very basic and introductory one is just to base it off of the page itself. What sort of user journeys are you expecting given off of a specific page, or might want to feature on a page? You can organize it that way. Another very common one is to utilize libraries. Example would be like Cucumber, which will take Gherkin, a business language. It'll take the if, then, when language, and then programmatically tie each of those lines to the acceptance criteria to specific actions within a POM file. So that's another way I see test organized based on feature. Yeah?
Is the expect method part of the page test-based classes that provided by
Yes.
Playwright?
Yes, yes it is. Yes, part of that Fluent API.
Just for context, POM file in a Java
Mm-hmm.
means something entirely different.
Oh, yes. I've also had struggles with different kinds of POM files in Java. Yeah.
Those are fun to deal with, if I recall.
Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar with Java, a POM file is a lot of where you maintain a lot of your dependencies and third-party kind of libraries get imported in Java. I apologize for those of you who work in Java. Best of luck to you. Hopefully someday you see the light of .NET. Yeah, so let's go ahead and go to one of our classes here. So go to our privacy page tests. So I have some smoke tests broken out by page here. See here I have a privacy page. Very descriptive, right? But we have a test for it. So let's, if we were to run this, we would go ahead and validate that, and I'm sure it would work just fine. But let's say my product owner comes to me tomorrow. We'll call him Schmuston for example use case. He says, James, I've decided we should put our privacy page as a link in the footer for our website. I go, yeah, sure thing, Schmuston. Whatever you say, man. So I go through, pretend that I'm coding this, and it's not just commented out. Do not look too closely at the man behind the curtain. Stop changes so they're represented here in the DOM. We'll go ahead and give that a spin. Great, there you go, Schmuston. There's your cool little privacy footer. I'm just going to go ahead and get that PR open, push it there onto main, and call it a day once the test passed, right? What if I were to tell you sometimes the way we write tests makes them brittle?
I'm shocked.
Are you trying to tell me that test code is code? Oh no! What's this? I have a regression in my code to test regressions. 4 regressions. So let's go ahead and look here. So it looks like in my haste to go ahead and implement a new addition to my web page, I have broken my test. Because now, instead of 1 privacy page link, I have 2, and Playwright doesn't know what the heck I'm talking about when I'm trying to get 1 link for 2 given links on a page. If only there was some way I could have anticipated this. Well, it turns out there is. Another common methodology that we like to use in the test automation business is called the test ID method. So I'm going to go ahead and go to this front end code here. And I'm thinking to myself, shoot. Well, what if from the setup of my test scripting, my test authoring, I went ahead and I gave a specific attribute for the component that I want to grab within that encapsulated locator. This is what we call the test ID. So that way, throughout the evolution of a code base, the evolution of a web app, we can stay assured that we will always be able to get a specific component as we're writing out our tests by always grabbing a specific attribute value. So in this case, our data test ID. And what's great about Playwright is that is built-in methodology for the API. It has a .getByTestID because the writers and programmers of Playwright are very smart people. They know that this is a great way often to write out your test code. So let's go ahead and do just that. As an aside, you notice I have a base page here. A lot of web layouts, especially within context of .NET, have a main layout. These are elements which are common throughout a web page, which aren't specific to a page. So anything that we can generically refer to at a base level, we put here. So pay no attention to the code behind the curtain. I'm totally just coding this out live. I'm going to go ahead, instead of getting it by its area role, which, by the way, great way for testing accessibility, I'm going to go ahead and show Batman the best way of staying ahead of those pesky regressions that Riddler introduces. So cool, I've updated the way that I grab that element. I'm going to get it by its test ID now instead of a generic area role. And let's run things as if we had done this from the start.
When it says get by test ID, that is just a standard random ID, right? It's not some test specific ID.
It's looking for a specific named attribute, custom attribute. It is, I'll show this real quick. Yeah, just HTML.
Okay, data test ID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just for illustrative purposes, I'll go back to this. So my locator. And it says right there in kind of the method comments, it's going to look for that specific data-test ID. So it's just, at this point, more of an industry standard practice when we're scripting out this automation. It's definitely how we resolve a lot of the issues at the shop where we were doing Selenium.
And is data test ID something that's standard across a bunch of different frameworks? Like I'm writing out Vue front end. Will that still be an available thing, or is that just a .NET app?
It should be available throughout.
You might not have something coded explicitly to look for it, but you can always grab the attribute.
Right, yeah.
Those data dash attributes are kind of standard nowadays.
And you can create your own and just like data prefix on the front of it.
Cool. Just as planned. No worries, Batman. I've got your back. Yeah, vaguely familiar. It must be just something heroic about you, Matt. That's clearly Batman, though, not you. So this is moving more towards kind of the end of my presentation. Before we get more into kind of some questions that we have or any other experiments we want to run, I did want to point out, similar to my last presentations, widely available resources for anyone who's trying to get stuck or is looking for more information on the the power and tools that you can leverage through Playwright. I may not specifically have the answers to. There's a ton of Microsoft-supported documentation surrounding Playwright. There's a very large blossoming community of people who are enthusiastic about Playwright and get involved with. And there's also a dedicated Microsoft learning path for going ahead and writing Playwright tests. So a lot of great stuff out there for the community to leverage. That being said, I did want to open the floor a bit to see what other questions we might have, anything that I could address or we could game out. Just anything someone's curious on.
So at this point, what would be the limitations of Playwright as compared to like Selenium or Jest or other kind of front-end specific testing frameworks? What would you not use Playwright instead use the others, or can it replace pretty much all the basic things the others do?
I would answer specifically for Playwright. This was built with .NET in mind, so that was a big interest for me and a big use case for myself when I was looking for tools that my organization could leverage at Foxen. I'm not going to make the leap to say Playwright is better than all the other test frameworks out there, but it's definitely a heck of a lot better than Selenium. I'll at least say that.
That's true.
At least my last interactions with Selenium. Hopefully it's matured a little bit since I last interacted with it. But,
So
yeah.
if you're running it in an automated way,
Mm-hmm.
then you don't have to use a browser. So in an automated test suite, you're probably using it without a browser, so that browser false would be, or
Right.
headless false or whatever it was.
Yes.
You would flip that to the opposite.
Right. You're.
Mhm.
So-
Yeah, so you just turn on headless
So headless
and then
true.
slow mode.
So if I'm putting it in my build pipeline or something, I'm probably gonna set it to true. Is
Yeah.
it just using like Phantom.js headless browser type model to do that?
Yes, it runs Puppeteer under the hood. So whatever
Puppeteer,
Puppeteer's mechanism for doing that is, it's likely doing that. Yeah. Yeah, and you're right about kind of that's the configuration you're looking for sure.
Can you talk about the expect timeout again? Is that just the start time of the browser?
It's essentially saying, this is what I'm going to wait for a component to become available, whether it's disabled or rendering, whatever that is. This is what I'm going to wait until I throw an error or retry, essentially. There's inherent retry logic. I know that you can configure that. I haven't played around with that specifically, but it's definitely there as an option. And that timeout is basically just saying, how long am I going to wait before I start to get concerned and throw an exception?
Are those your comments or are those packaged?
These are mine. I spun this up initially for my team, but I figured it would be a good use case for us as well. This test.run settings is not native to Playwright. This is something that I kind of showed off as this is something we should be doing as best practices to easily configure things as we run tests. Yeah.
Then is this repo available?
It is not, but it could be.
At least that file looks very nice. And then follow-up thing, what is the way that you're normally injecting things in a pipeline for Playwright? Because we understand this in app settings.json, but like how are you kind of, if I want to inject secrets or a specific URL for different environments in the browser, or for different URLs for different environments, where would you inject that in the pipeline?
App settings is a good place for sure. Yep, for sure. I'm sure there's many different ways to do it, but I would say anything you can do already in .NET, especially for environment specific, like you mentioned.
It works just like the rest of .NET.
Yeah, just like any other like .NET project, C# project. Yeah. I've seen a lot of good examples. Something I would like to do at my for the project at work is to leverage something called Test Startup, where we're injecting a lot of things that we need on a given basis. things. So that's something I definitely would recommend. Would have liked to demo that, but that's a little more sophisticated than what we have planned for today. But yeah, app setting is definitely a good way to put all that. Anything else? Unless anyone has anything else to say. Thank you all so much for coming and watching me fidget around Visual Studio tonight. Hopefully you learned something useful. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Speech.
Thanks for all your help. You too.
Hey, I found you a backup
So
option.
did you have to pose long for this? I
I don't know what you're talking about. I was doing my own thing.
Bruce Wayne.
I don't know what you're talking about. All right. So, James, thank you for that. Next month we will have Barrett talking about .NET Inspire and what the heck that is, why you should care, and how it's awesome and new and shiny and all that good stuff. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that because I feel dumb every time I talk about Aspire. But I aspire to learn more. Who wants free stuff? Specifically, we are raffling away a license of a JetBrains tool. It's a coupon code, technically speaking, good for a free year of one of their products. Could be ReSharper, could be Writer, if you want to stay in the .NET world. If you want to leave the .NET world, you could get something like PHP Storm, WebStorm, even I'm told they have Java IDEs. And then they have data-friendly things as well. So if you are interested in that, raise your hand. Okay, I see 4 hands. So I'm going to have you count. Sorry, too young to spawn that. Okay, so I got everybody, right? Okay. I am at random.org. I'm doing 1 to 4. I'm verified it's inclusive. I'm going to hit generate. If I was really mean, I'd have James test the site because it has a verify you are human bit to it first. So
It can be done.
yeah, I'm still working on verifying I'm human. 3 was our winner. So Mark, that'd be you. So yeah, all right. The whole Wombat family can benefit from a coupon code. But I'll hook you up with that. I think I have your contact info anyway. But yeah. So next month should be our last time here, and we will be talking more about places, areas to go after that for our October and the next year's events as well. Out of curiosity, show of hands, who likes downtown-ish area? I see a thumbs down. Okay, that's a little strong. I'm gonna count that as a hands up because it was technically a hand up, right? How about Dublin-ish area? Okay, and a whole bunch of ambivalence. What area would be?
Category for wherever.
Wherever is. I'm up for that.
What was that place we used to be before this?
Microsoft Building Library.
No.
You're talking about GoTo.
Oh, ICC?
GoTo. I'm never gonna not call them GoTo.
G20 something.
Yeah, goals to outcomes.
I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, Star 76 has the next building over.
Yeah,
So.
we'll be looking at our options. We'll be presenting something, in the time being. But if you find anything that we're not aware of, reach out to us. But we'll be exploring those things and trying to figure out what's best for the group and good best for folks. So, hang out, have fun, have more pizza, have some candy and drinks. Just make sure you shut the fridge because that thing is loud. But yeah, see you next month. And James, thank you again for presenting.
Thanks for having me.
I have a question for you, James. I've now seen you talk about Playwright 3 times. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, in various capacities, right?